upon a time, I was a newly ordained priest, and as often happens, I had to go have Mass in one of the local nursing homes. And this was not here. This is a town in our diocese, but not here, so you don't know what I'm talking about. But I went to this nursing home, and I was told before I went, they have everything you need for Mass. I was told, okay, they have all the books, they have all the bread and wine, all the chalice and the paten and everything that you need. All you got to do is bring vestments and you're good to go. So, okay, that's fine. So I show up and go through everything, and Mass is set up, all ready to go. They have a nice table prepared. They have candles on the altar, and everything is good. I go through Mass, I say all the prayers, and I go to consume the Eucharist, as you have to as a priest, and I find that what is in this chalice does not taste like wine. It tastes suspiciously like grape juice. And so I asked the lady who had set this up after Mass, said, okay, where did you get the wine? And she's like, oh, it's just grape juice. We got it from Hy-Vee or something. I'm like, okay, that's a problem. All right, here's why that's a problem. That is not valid matter for the Eucharist. And so I said all the right prayers, I did all the right actions, used all the right stuff, except for one little thing, and it rendered the entire Mass invalid. It was not the Eucharist. So I came back, and I offered Mass at one of the side altars in our church, just to make sure that I offered Mass for that intention. But this teaches a very important lesson. That for the sacraments to be valid, you have to have really 5 things, but we'll just focus on 2. The first is what we call valid matter, right? You have to have the right stuff. And what is that for the Eucharist? It's unleavened wheat bread and grape wine. It's that simple. You can't use grape juice, even if you happen to really like grape juice, as I do, all right? I like grape juice. But you have to use wine. So valid matter, the stuff, and then what we call valid form, the words that you say. You have to say the right words. Now this is the same thing with the sacrament of holy matrimony, and that's how this ties into our gospel. Because Jesus in the gospel is very clear. And he says, look, whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery. If you divorce your husband and marry another, you commit adultery. Now, there's a lot of people, unfortunately, in our church today, including a lot of cardinals, and I'm totally serious about this, that want to take that passage of the Bible, take a little pair of scissors, and just kind of snip, 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 and done, and pretend that Jesus didn't say that. But Jesus did say that, didn't he? And so we have to deal with this. This can be a difficult teaching. But in a particular way, I want to focus today on the church's ministry, and I call it that specifically, ministry of granting annulments. So what I want to do is talk about what an annulment is not, and talk about what it is and why that is important. I want to do it in the context of my little story of my attempted Mass that wasn't really a Mass at a nursing home. So first of all, what is an annulment not? An annulment is not Catholic divorce. In the eyes of the church, there is no such thing as divorce. Divorce is a legal term. It concerns what happens to things when couples split apart in the realm of the law. Divorce is a legal term. And so an annulment is not a Catholic divorce. But what is it? Well, remember what I said. Every sacrament has to have valid matter and valid form. If you're lacking one or the other, or perhaps even both, but one or the other, then you do not have a valid sacrament. Whatever else you might have, it's not the sacrament. So what is that for holy matrimony? Well, the matter of the sacrament is what we call consent. That the bride and the groom come before the church and exchange their vows. This is why you can't write your own vows in the Catholic Church. There are 4 forms. You got to pick one of them. I don't care which one you pick, but you got to pick one of them because the church understands that the vows you exchange at marriage mean something. We don't get to just make them up as we go along. For marriage to be what the church understands, we have to promise what the church intends. And so the couple exchanges vows, they exchange consent, and the form of the sacrament is to do it in front of a validly ordained minister of the church. So, for example, a Catholic baptized Catholic may not go down to the courthouse and go in front of a justice of the peace and sign a piece of paper and say, poof, we're married. You might be married in the eyes of the law, but you are not married in the eyes of the church. Now, if this describes you and you're thinking, "Ooh, gosh, Father, I did that like 50 years ago," no problem, all right? We can fix this in like 10 minutes. And honestly, it's never too late, all right? It's never too late. Once upon a time, true story, once upon a time, I had a man dying in the hospital. And they called, and it's not uncommon for a priest to get called to go to the hospital. But when I got there, he said, "I'd like to get married." I said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "Yeah, my wife and I, we've been civilly married for like 40 years, and I want to make sure that this is right before God before I go to meet him face to face." And I said, "That's pretty admirable. That's great." And we did it. So we had a marriage right there in the guy's hospital room, and then I anointed him, gave him communion, and it was beautiful, and he died like a day and a half later. It's never too late. And again, like I said, it only takes 10 minutes to fix that if you are not married in the church. The more difficult one, though, is what we call the exchange of consent. And so remember what I said, an annulment is not a Catholic divorce. What an annulment does is it looks and it says, okay, was consent actually exchanged? Or did it just look like consent was exchanged? Let me give you an example of what this might entail. It's just one possible way. It's not the only way. But suppose a husband and wife are in a marriage that is very abusive, where one of the two spouses, or perhaps even both, is very abusive towards the other. What do we have here? Well, we have a situation where the spouse who is the victim of this either would not have accepted this in the beginning had he or she known it would occur, or if it was occurring in the beginning, certainly entered into this marriage under duress. And so what do we have? We have an example where no authentic consent was truly exchanged. And the church would say, look, you should not and do not have to stay in an abusive relationship. If you're the victim of that, by all means, certainly seek out some help. Go through the proper channels, seek out some marriage counseling. Very good thing to do. But by all means, if that fails, you should not stay in an abusive relationship. And there's a way to rectify, to remedy this situation, to be healed from this. So again, what is an annulment not? It is not Catholic divorce. What is it? It is God mediating through the church, rather the church mediating God's grace and mercy in a situation that can be very painful, but offering healing and sanctification so that people who are in perhaps a bad situation can move forward. And so if this is you, if this describes you, do not be afraid. We're never afraid of God's mercy. We're never afraid of his grace. Now, is it a painful process? Yeah, it can be. I know a lot of people who have been through this process of attaining an annulment. It's painful. But I'll tell you what, I've yet to meet someone who regretted doing it. Now, I suspect there are some out there, but I have not yet met one. A person who looks back and says, gosh, I wish I hadn't gone through that process. Because it can be very healing and really offer closure to someone who was in a very bad, very hurtful, very, very derogatory, for lack of a better word, relationship. Put this all together. What does this all mean? Do we need to take Jesus' words seriously? Yeah, absolutely. Okay? Divorce and remarriage is no bueno. It is not a good thing. If that's you, come talk to us, all right? Because again, we can help. We can go back and look at your previous marriage and say, okay, were the necessary elements present for this to be a valid sacrament, or was something lacking, rendering the entire thing invalid? It looked like it happened, but it didn't actually in reality. We need not fear. God's grace, his mercy, leads us to healing. He desires this for us, always given and always mediated through our Holy Mother, the Church.